In a world where AI has evolved to take your job, it can do programming, it can make art, it can... Hold on a second. Is it really that bad already? Because when you think about it, it's only been about half a year since models like ChatGPT and Stable Diffusion bursted onto the scene. And yet, it does feel like we're already living in an entirely different world. It's so easy to already take for granted all the new tools that we have. So let's compare to my initial video after ChatGPT was just released, where I made a very simple game simply through only letting it generate the code, to how I now actually use it in my day-to-day development. To what extent are these AI tools just that? Tools to make our lives easier. And to what extent should we be afraid of being replaced by them? Now, what we're going to be making today is one of the last fundamental pieces of my combat system. You see, I have this entire nice modular combo system which has impact particles and sounds and camera shakes and everything like that. But on top of that, I need to have a special attack for this weapon. And I'm going to just draw out what that special attack will be. So assuming we have a player and some enemies around that player. Excuse my poor drawing, I'm drawing with a mouse. For this special attack, it's going to take the closest enemy to the player, so that would probably be this one right now, and it should teleport over to it and then do a attack against it. Then it should teleport to a new random location somewhere in its immediate vicinity and attack it again. And do that about 7 to 10 times, the exact amount I will need to fine tune. I have a pretty good rough estimation as to how that should work, but oftentimes it can be helpful to have ChatGPT there for the more exact implementations or maybe different suggestions as to how to do this. I already have the inputs entirely set up for this thing. So I have the inputs bound with a function, which then runs a function on the weapon itself. Then each individual weapon is a child of the weapon class with a overridden special attack function. So if we go into my sword base, you can see I have a placeholder bit of code here which just heals the player when it does the special attack. This is where the magic is going to need to happen, which is where ChatGPT comes in. So let's just ask it in Unreal Engine using C++. I need a function that'll teleport my player character to a random location around a given point at a set distance from that point. Let's see if that is a good enough explanation as to what we should do. So we have a float for angle, which is a random angle. That makes sense. The offset is a vector. We need a distance variable. That makes sense. Cosine, distance, sine, all that math pretty much adds up to me. And then we have a destination, which is the center point plus the offset. And then we set the actual location to the destination. That all makes perfect sense to me. So let's copy over that code and make our own separate function for that, which can be private. Void teleport to enemy, and we'll take in a f vector for the enemy location. Then we'll create a implementation for that and simply put in that. Now the center point will be our enemy location, and our distance I will just make a u property for. So we do u property, edit default only, and that will be a float for attack distance. Now let's check if this code actually works, because while this theoretically checks out as far as I can read it, it's always good to just check code in general, especially if you didn't write it. So when I do my special attack, I will teleport to enemy and we'll take the location. Probably should make a separate vector for that to make it more readable. For now, I'm not going to do that. We'll go player. I think I just have a variable for closest enemy. And there we can get actor location. And that crashes the engine. So that definitely, it's it's trying to access a null pointer, which I don't quite understand why that is the case. I mean, I should definitely build in protection against that, but we do have a closest enemy. So that's where we go back to ChatGPT, where you can make a new chat for this. I find that actually you don't need to at all, so you can just keep typing in here. I have a child actor component. The actor in it has a variable pointer to player, which is being set like this. And then I go into my weapon, I copy over this line of code, and I simply paste it in here. ChatGPT will be able to read that. But when I look engine, the value of player is nothing. View gameplay, statics, get player character, this world, player index 0. And that's complaining because we need to cast that. That again makes full sense. We need to cast that to a action RPG character, and then we need to use this as the Now there should literally be no way of this thing getting a null value. If it still gets a null value, I'm going to lose my mind. This, by the way, is a very inefficient way of doing things. I do feel the need to point out. Oh, okay. Well, my sword is getting teleported. It's just the player doesn't get teleported. And that is because ChatGPT didn't know that I put this on my player. So we set our own actor location instead of setting the player's actor location. So let's set the player's actor location instead. Also go back into our sword and set our attack distance to something like 100 for special attack. Probably should be far enough away. Probably needs to be a little bit more. But yeah, for the spider it's definitely too close. Maybe we need to do something about doing it on a per enemy basis, or doing it based on that capsule component radius or something like that. That actually makes a lot of sense. Let's try it with this guy. Okay, so it definitely just needs to be more than 100 to begin with. Let's try and ask ChatGPT to make that use the enemy's capsule component radius times 2 plus 100. Seems kind of reasonable. For the teleporting function, I want it to automatically use the enemy characters capsule component radius times 2 plus distance variable to calculate the distance to teleport around the desired location. I don't think it was aware that I was using this on enemies before, and it of course doesn't have my enemy code, so we're going to need to change this around a little bit. But we have your enemy character. That can just be a normal character. We don't really need it to be anything else. We don't really need all of these U logs in there as well. We do need the null point check. That we do need. Realistically, you probably should make a separate function for this as well. It didn't do that. And this can just be a character. Doesn't need to be anything specific. Enemy sends a point, get owner. What the? That doesn't make any sense. It's trying to get the owner of a vector. That's not how that works, ChatGPT. That's not how that works at all. Then we can set our distance to being... It doesn't even add 100. Hold the frick on. It just entirely ignored the plus 100 bit. That is absolutely... That's insane. Well, it's not insane because it's just an AI, but still, it's kind of annoying. This should now automatically teleport us based on how big the actual enemy is. So smaller enemies will teleport much closer by their origin points, and bigger enemies will at least not be overlapping with them, in theory. Let's put that theory to the test. As soon as we're not getting chased by lightning, that is. It's definitely not teleporting us to the right enemy here. So that is worrying. But more or less this is working. It's just a little iffy in that it tries to teleport us on top of it first. I don't understand why. You see, I'm pretty sure that this is just entirely bullshit, because the event triggered first trigger doesn't exist. We can see what the options are. We have cancelled completed, none, ongoing started, and triggered. Triggered occurred after 1 or more processing ticks. You can try start. I'm pretty sure that's not how that works, but let's give it a shot anyway. It doesn't do the same thing when I just hold down X to attack. Actually, I've never tested that, does it? Oh, it definitely does. No, I definitely need to fix that then. Okay, so we need to use started, and now it works perfectly fine, as you can see. It teleports me to where I should be. Okay, let me fix that for the rest of my code as well. Because we definitely need the heal can be triggered then. Lock on probably needs to be started. Dash needs to be started. Attacking needs to be started, and then looking, moving, and then started for jumping as well. Not that it matters too much for jumping. Now, the actual attacking is the more important part, because we're going to need to loop through an array of attacks for that. And that is what worries me. And this is mostly built upon my own code, which is a little too like all over the place in different classes and stuff like that to really provide to ChatGPT reasonably. So I do need to build quite a bit of this myself. Okay, so we simply teleport to the enemy. We don't need this else statement anymore because we know that this works. And if we have teleported to that enemy, we use the player set attack function, which I've made, and that takes in a attack data asset. We'll get one out of the attacks, and we'll get that of index current attack. And since those are soft pointers, we need to load synchronous for those as well. And then we'll increment current attack. If current attack is now larger than our attack's number, -1, current attack is getting back to 0. That piece of code we're probably going to need to move around to somewhere else, because what am I going to do with this is the question, right? Let's ask ChatGPT, not specifically for the code, but more so for inspiration. And I'm going to make a new thread for this one. Actually no, because we've already been talking about like the teleporting thing. After the player teleports, it needs to do an attack taken from an array of data assets. When the attack finishes, it should teleport again and do the next attack. This is my current code for this system. And just copy the entire CPP file. Okay, so it makes a delegate for us to call when the attack is finished so that we can do the next attack again. So when we do our special attack, we set attack, current attack, load synchronous, and then we create a delegate on the player that we bind this other function to, which will then do the current attack ++ before doing the next attack. Then check if that goes over, and this should also then just return, because this will be an infinite loop. Okay, I think I can do that. That seems reasonable. And seeing if this works. So that's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. Apparently there was 3. So my special attack works now. That's entirely perfect and very, very good. Now the next part is to make duplicates of the actual animations without the lead up and wind down animation, so that it's nice and fast and snappy, especially since there is a little bit of extra delay in there now, which I don't particularly love. And maybe I also want to disable the gravity during this time. The large part of the code stands, and you've been able to see how I actually implement using ChatGPT in that coding workflow. Again, specifically for Unreal Engine, it is a little bit weak sometimes, in a combination of it probably just doesn't seem like it knows Unreal Engine 100% very well as its dataset only going up to, I believe, 2021, and not having the most up-to-date information on Unreal Engine 5. So I'm kind of putting it through a worst-case scenario. I am aware of that, but still, I do believe that being so afraid of losing your job to ChatGPT, at least for right now, you're probably fine. And a very big thank you to all of my Patreons. You can see them on screen right now. If you want to help out supporting the channel, there's a link down below in the description to the Patreon page.